Okay, let's get started. So this week, I wanted to talk a little bit about the US election data, since the US elections, presidential elections, as well as the Senate and House of Representative elections are happening this week, right now. There's lots of data kind of floating around on the internet. And I found this dashboard that was made by the Ferlange, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but I found it here on their blog, and I thought it was a really interesting way to visualize the different political parties in the US. Since if you're not from the US, it's probably a little bit confusing, but there's two parties in the US, major political parties in the US, the Democratic Party, which is the blue, and the Republican Party, which is red. In Japan, I know there's also political parties. I think there's more than two, there's a few. But the way they've created these maps is they've colored different areas based on the majority of people who support which political party. So, for example, if we go to one of these dashboards here, let's just go to this one here, since it's pretty ordinary, pretty simple. So this is a simple map of the 50 states of the US, and each state is just colored very simply using 5 different colors. Shades of blue mean that most people in that state support the Democratic Party. Shades of red mean most people in that state support the Republican Party. And then this gray is kind of half and half. The light red means that it's mostly Republican, but there's also, it's like maybe 60% Republican or something. But there's a good percentage of Democrat supporters as well. Same for light blue, just means mostly Democratic, but there's also a pretty good amount of Republicans, or the red color. So very simple kind of map here. This is kind of what we're used to seeing on different websites. So there are a lot of websites that looked at the data and trying to predict who's going to win the election by using poll data that is collected in the US. And as you can see, Biden the blue candidate was favored to win by a very large margin, right? This is like, 2 out of 5, 15, like 2 out of 18 scenarios where Trump wins. In reality, it hasn't been this close. It's more 50-50. So the polls were very wrong this year, which is quite rare. But as you can see, they really thought that Biden would be, definitely the winner. It wouldn't even be close, right? So some interesting ways to visualize this data. In this case, each of these little circles is just a different scenario, right? These are just different scenarios, and they're saying in 1 out of 100 scenarios, 89 scenarios show Biden winning, and 10 scenarios show Donald Trump winning. And there's more kind of charts here. This one's really interesting. This one it's kind of confusing too. I don't like it that much because it's kind of confusing, but basically it's saying that, each state, and this kind of goes into US politics maybe a little bit too much, but each state has a certain number of what they call electoral votes, which are basically these people who, after everyone from the state decides who they want to vote for, this person will then actually place a vote for that person. So in the US, it's not like each person gets a vote and it goes towards the Biden or Trump. Actually, your vote goes towards kind of like a state vote, and then your state has a certain number of votes that it can then use towards Trump or Biden. It's kind of confusing, but the idea is basically that because the whole idea was that because some states have because there are much higher populations in some states, it would give kind of unfair advantage to some states or some parts of the state, some cities, right? And this was kind of a way to balance it out. So the very large bars here, the very large bars in the snake means that that state has more votes, right? So if most people in Florida want Biden, then the 29 electoral votes, as you can see in the tooltip, the 29 votes would go to Biden, right? Even though 48% of people in Florida like Trump, if the majority of people in Florida like Biden, then all 29 votes go to Biden. It's not like 48% of the 29 votes go to Trump and then 50 go to Biden. So that's kind of how this chart works. It's sized based on kind of the power of each state, the voting power of each state. And basically it's colored by just like the map earlier. If it's very heavy with Trump supporters, then it's very red. If it's kind of 50-50, then it's lighter red. So the ones in the middle here are kind of 50-50. So according to polls, the darker color states are more certain to vote Trump or Biden. So those are kind of considered automatic kind of wins. And so this is kind of showing a path, like if Trump wants to win, he'll definitely get Nebraska because 72% of people support him there. And he'll get Wyoming and West Virginia and all these states. And then the last states that he'll need to win, the most risky, are these ones towards the middle. So it's kind of a confusing chart, but I thought it was kind of an interesting way to show all 50 states kind of as like a path, almost like a board game. I thought it was kind of interesting. Going back to these visualizations here, it's, I think there are 14 different charts here, and each of them just show how the states are broken up by blue or red. So let's kind of go through each of these and talk about kind of the pros and cons. And this is meant to be more of a discussion. So if people have questions or comments, you can just unmute yourself and then we can talk about each chart and whether you think it's valuable or not. Maybe I should use the Tableau version so we don't have to load it every time. So let's start with, we already talked about this one, so we'll go back. Start with this one. This one here is showing each individual county, right? Because the voting actually happens by county. Every county has like election place where people will go and cast a vote. And then by county, it's counted up, and then that goes to the state total. So this one is showing a very detailed view of how the US is split up between Democratic Party and Republican Party. Generally in very high urban areas where there are big cities like Seattle up here, and maybe San Francisco and Los Angeles, New York, Austin, just this little speck of blue. Where is it? I think it's Travis County. I think it's here. These big city areas are typically blue places, right? And then as we get more into the country, it turns red, more Republican. That's the general trend in the US, and you can really see it here. This is Chicago, right? Minneapolis up here, New York City. I think St. Louis, Missouri is here. So big cities are typically blue. Does anyone have any comments on this one? It's kind of an ordinary chart, but does a good job of showing how the US is divided by county. And this one's pretty simple to make, right? We would just add county to the map to create something like this. Trying to exit the presentation. All right, this one's quite simple. It's just county. We take county off. Then it goes up to the state level, right? So this is just built-in Tableau kind of geocoding. Very simple to do. Let's go on to this chart here. This is a bubble map. So rather than showing the just the filled shapes of each state, it's showing each state as a bubble. And the benefit of this visualization is because it's a bubble, the bubble can be a different size, right? We can have a big bubble and a little bubble, and very tiny bubbles. And this is good because we can see which states have more power, right? The bubble is sized by how many votes that state has. So if most people in California support Biden, then all 55 electoral votes go towards Biden, right? So California is very valuable to the candidate. Whereas a state like Wyoming only has 3 votes because the population is much lower. If they win Wyoming, they only get 3 votes. So California is, you know, more than 10 times more valuable than Wyoming, right? However, you know, that aside, the vote power aside, California is almost always blue, so it wouldn't make sense for a red candidate to campaign here because almost always it's going to be blue. The lighter colors here and these gray ones, the big gray bubbles are the most valuable. Every single presidential election, these gray bubbles are very valuable to win because it's almost 50-50. It can either be blue or red. And there's a lot of votes to win, right? So of course, this is where you'd want to spend your time trying to win these bigger gray bubbles because we don't know if it's going to be red or blue. So you would want to go there and convince everyone to vote for you so you can win those votes. New York and California, they're always going to be blue. It'd be a waste of time to campaign there and spend your time there. Any questions on this chart? There's some downsides to this. For example, everything's kind of spaced out, so it's difficult to compare the sizes of the bubbles. Like these, we know that these are both 3, but Kansas and Nebraska are quite similar, even though Kansas has 6 and this one has 5. So the bubbles are a little bit hard to compare in size. Can anyone else think of any other advantages or disadvantages? Do people like this kind of chart?
Probably the bubbles on the right is kind of overlapping a bit.
Yeah, good point. These bubbles here, it's difficult to see. Even Rhode Island is kind of hidden, like on top of this other bubble. That's a good point.
Ah, すいません。ちょっと日本語でコメントでもいいですか？
はい。
ありがとうございます。さっきの1個前のビズですと、さっきの1個前のやつだと、なんて言うんだろうな。
これですね。
そうですね。それだとすごい赤が、
これですね。
そう、それ。これだとすごい赤が強くて、なんかトランプさんが勝つのかなって思ったんですけど、でも、さっきのバブルチャートだと、こう、なんか、バイデンさんとトランプさん、なんかちょっとこう、50-50なのかなっていうのがちょっと感じれるので、一番最初のだと、こう、もうトランプさん圧勝、I think Trump will win って思ったんですけど、でも、this chart, I think, Biden and Trump, I think 50-50, I think.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that's because the bubbles are now sized based on the actual power of that state. Whereas in this one, you can't really see you can see just how much land or how much space is taken up. But some of these, a lot of the space here has very little people living, right? Not many people live in this area. Most of the population of the US is actually on here and in over here and kind of on the edges of the US, right? So very good point. If we're looking at this map, it looks like, wow, Trump really has the most of the support in the US. But actually it's not true because most people don't live in the middle. They live on the sides. And the populations are generally sized by the number of votes.
Is it meaningful to change that area pasted map to the circle? The most granular sheet.
This one, right?
Yeah, this one. To change this to circle.
It might be interesting, right? We can try it.
Maybe small dots, red dots, small, and maybe middle-sized blue should appear if you.
And then size by
population or the number of voters.
Well, which one was it? This data, I wonder if this data has the, I wonder if it has number of voters in here.
Or maybe NAM,
oh no, these are parameters.
Parameter, okay. Or the number of records.
Let's try win advantage. I don't know what this is. Number of records. Don't have it, but I think we have. Oh, here we go. We can maybe use this if we need to blend though. Let's just see if it does it. Yeah, we need to blend on this is by county. Oh, that's why, because electoral votes are by state. And this data is by county. We won't be able to see electoral votes by county. That's why.
Okay, so it's not so meaningful to.
Yeah, if we had population, I think population would be good to put on here.
Yeah.
Then we could see, we would see San Francisco is very big.
Yeah.
New York County, I don't remember the name of the county, but that would be very big, right?
Yeah. And the electoral voters is more or less proportionally assigned to the population, right?
Right.
Okay. So maybe, as Nageno-san pointed out, maybe that pasted map is not reflecting good in the good way to the power of the Trump and Biden. Maybe that country-wise, the county-wise, I don't know, the state-wise circle map may reflect the reality more accurately.
Yeah,
this one,
I think
right?
so.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, good points.
Interesting.
Let's take a look at the next one here. Can we skip one? Okay, it's okay. I think it'll come, it's on order, but this one's a tree map. So this one is not taking into account the shape of the country at all, right? Everything is kind of organized by the party preference. So blue is here, and then red and undecided, or 50-50. And this one is good because you can see most, if we think of the entire country as just this rectangle, then you can see more than 50% is blue, right? And maybe 25% is red, maybe 30%, and then maybe 15% is half-half, 50-50. And then within each of these bigger slices, we can see that the strength of each state, right? California, New York Pennsylvania are very strong. But we can see the undecided states are actually quite big especially compared to these smaller red ones, these smaller blue ones. These undecided ones, they're only 5 here, but they make up almost 15 or 20%. Right. So winning these, of course, is very important, as well as these lighter ones, like Pennsylvania.
What the area means?
The area is electoral votes.
Electoral votes. Okay.
The downside of this is it's difficult to see each state as we're used to seeing it on the map. And we have to know the abbreviation, which might be difficult if you don't know the states, right? So maybe especially difficult for people who are from outside of the US to know what some of these states are. I guess you can hover over it, but without hovering over it, it's difficult to see that. And, there is a geographic trend, right? We can see most of the red is actually in the south and in the middle of the US, and most of the blue is kind of in the West Coast and then in the Northeast. But we don't really see that with this chart.
Maybe it's good to combine as a dashboard, the right side, this map, left side map, and hover over the rectangle. Maybe they highlighted where it is.
Yes, that would be good. And then you can have both. So actually, that's kind of what a lot of websites are doing, is they're showing, maybe I can find it. There's a good one, Politico election map. That kind of does that. It doesn't use a tree map. Instead, it uses a bar chart. I'm running out of memory. Okay, maybe I'll close. Okay, so this chart here is the actual election data. So it's not over yet, but you can see it's very close. But it's showing which states have actually been won. So, quite similar to the forecast. Much of the West Coast is blue. Much of the Northeast is blue as well. And then this middle area is red. And then those gray states kind of don't show up on this map, but those would be, some of them are already done, but Pennsylvania was one of them. You can see it's almost exactly split, 49.6 to 49.3. This was one of those gray states. And at top, we can see, instead of a tree map, they're just showing kind of just a bar. But basically the total states, the total electoral votes kind of added together into this bar. If they pass 270, then they win. So it's quite close. But once again, it's showing the map and also the bar chart up top to show the total votes.
But one downside of this chart is that we don't figure out how strong each state is. Maybe Florida has a 29 voters. Instead, other small small states such as Utah, just 6, or the Alaska 3, or Hawaii 3, or something like that. So,
true.
But yeah, geographically it's very clear. Yeah, and
this one's interesting.
Yeah, this is interesting. Yes.
Move this out of the way. So this one's interesting because it's like the previous chart, but the sort has changed, right? They've just rearranged it, and they put it in the order of kind of like the shape of the United States. If the United States was a square, right? California would be on the left somewhere, Florida would be on the bottom right, New York would be up top, Alaska would be way over here, here's Washington. So it makes it a little bit easier to find
Mhm.
the state you're looking for. If you're looking for a specific state, right? If you're looking for Texas, then you know to look at the bottom. Wisconsin would be up top.
Mhm. Yeah, and we can easily understand that how the non-decided states will influence to the bottom line, because Florida, oh, big state, but they are undecided yet. And Ohio quite big and still undecided, so maybe that will affect the result of the total election. So
Yes.
we can simply understand how the current status, which is winning, which is losing. So and how it's difficult to predict the final result, because many big states such as Florida and Ohio is still under consideration.
Yes.
Mm.
I think it's a little bit more difficult compared to this one to see the total power of undecided. It's difficult to compare the totals with this one compared to this one. So I think that's one downside.
Yeah, that's true. But this map is very interesting. Did you make it by yourself?
No, this is all these dashboards were made by, here's his blog. I can never pronounce the name, Furlang? I don't know, I'm butchering that. But these guys, Zen Masters, made made this dashboard. And I just thought it was really cool. Some of these maps I've never seen before. And I think, it can give us some inspiration when we're thinking about what kind of map to make.
Did they make this by manually, or did some calculation?
I think they probably used some custom spatial files. Yeah, they're using a custom shapefile to make this. So they probably manually put in kind of where these squares should go.
Okay. Oh, this is map. So, okay, understand. So instead of, for example, the hex bin, they made a custom shape, and maybe some longitude, latitude assigning to that shape. So maybe not manually, but by calculation. Interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if they used custom geocoding at all. Okay, so let's see, where is it? Yeah, a lot of the maps in here are custom made, which is too bad because some of them are very interesting, like this one.
Interesting.
It's kind of a strange looking animal.
But interesting, yeah.
Yeah, so this is a contiguous cartogram. And what it's trying to do is basically try to keep the shape of the state, but also change the size of the state based on the voting power of that state. So Washington and Oregon is a good example. Washington and Oregon are quite similar. If we go back to the main map here, Washington and Oregon are almost the same size, right? Actually, Oregon's a little bit bigger, but Oregon has less people, so it has almost half the votes as Washington, 7 in Oregon and 12 in Washington, but they're about the same size. If we look at this map here, you can see Oregon's about half the size as Washington. So they basically squished Oregon because it has less votes and made it about half the size of Washington. So that's kind of what this map is doing. It's just changing the shape or the size of the state based on how many votes it has. So it's like the bubble chart, but it's keeping the shape of the state and everything is more connected.
Yeah, this is super interesting.
Yeah, because if we look back at if we look back at this chart or even this chart, it looks like there's a lot of red here, kind of in the middle. You know, maybe you could say, 60% of the United States is red, maybe 50%, I'm not sure. If we look at this continuous cartogram, whoops, too far. It's less apparent, right? The red is much more squished, and these blue areas where there's higher population are much larger. So now it looks more like maybe 50-50, maybe even 60% blue. But these gray ones especially have gotten much larger as well, especially Florida and Georgia. And Alaska's tiny. What do people think about this chart?
So cartogram is the name of this map. I mean that representing the in this case electoral voters as a area or superficial area. So that is the definition of cartogram.
The definition of cartogram, I think it means just a shape chart, like cartography means map. So I think a cartogram means like a map chart. That's my guess.
So a contiguous has some specific meaning to represent this chart, this map.
Yeah, so contiguous just means the states are all connected, and this the next chart is non-contiguous. So you'll see that the states will be kind of separated.
Okay.
Any other comments on this one before I go to the next chart?
Sometimes we a little bit apart from this topic, but sometimes we see that distance by time. For example, Tokyo, New York is nearer than Tokyo, Moscow, for example. So and changing the shape of the map, representing the time of travel to one city to other city. So the shape of the globe is different than the geographical map, and that is quite interesting. Okay, Seoul is very near from the Tokyo, and now Hawaii is very near, but Sao Paulo is very far from the Tokyo. So we can see that information from this transformed map. So this is such a family of the map, maybe. So that gives us interesting information. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, no other comments on this chart? So this is a non-contiguous cartogram, and the difference is quite clear. They've kept the size of, they've kept the shape of the US, but they've still changed the size of the states, right? So you can see Wyoming is quite tiny. Remember, Oregon and Washington were about the same size in an actual map, but now Oregon has shrunk to maybe half the size of Washington. So very similar to the last map, except they didn't change the shape of the states. They just shrunk or grew the shape based on the number of votes. So California is quite large, New York is quite large, Florida's gotten larger. Texas is a little bit smaller because Texas actually has less votes than California, 55 to 38. So Texas shrunk a little bit. New York has 29, right? So New York grew. What do people think about this chart? What's good about it? What's bad?
I think this chart is difficult to read because non-contiguous have many white space. However, before previous chart is no white and red or blue. So I think this is very comparable, but non-contiguous is difficult to compare, I think.
Yeah, maybe that is because, or one part is because we are not so familiar with the area of the each state. So maybe for Ray, it's common sense that Texas is much more bigger than California, for example. But we don't know. Actually, maybe this is good. Okay. Texas is smaller than California, maybe so. So that we can get the direct information or comparison of the real superficial area and this shrinked map. So that is maybe one reason that it's difficult to read or understand this non-contiguous cartogram.
確かになるほど。
Anything good about this map?
Yeah, representing the voters as a size is good. So as other maps, but we see clearly more than from the other chart that Trump is winning in the central and south in the state, because by the separation we can see that okay, red is like a belt of the left upper left to the right bottom is area of Trump, and the at the same time and in opposite the ocean side is the land of Biden.
Yes. I think this chart is quite similar to the this bubble chart, right?
Yeah,
it's quite similar. You know, Texas slightly smaller than California. The difference is they've kept the shape of the state instead of the bubbles, and that really helps here, especially because there's a lot of tiny states. They're overlapping. If we look at this one again, you can see all the states are spread out. Nothing is overlapping, and so it's easier to see kind of the power of this area.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, especially there, many people are living there. So the area is small, but the circle is big. So that made circles overlapped. So this is very clear that small state can be can have the stronger power by the population.
Yes. Any other comments on this one? Okay. This is interesting. It's quite similar to the bubbles, except now it's squares, and the squares are arranged in the shape of the United States.
It's like Japan.
Yeah, it does look like Japan.
Florida
Okay,
is
maybe
Florida is Chiba, Texas is Mie, and California is Kyushu.
確かに。It's Japan. 確かに。
そうにしか見えなくなっちゃいました。
新潟 is MI, I don't know.
What do people think about this one? Is it good? Is it bad? Easy to read? Difficult?
Mm. なんか本当に日本地図にしか見えなくなっちゃって。
It doesn't look so much like the United States anymore, especially because the middle is so small. Usually the US has a big middle area, a lot of space, but this looks very small. Makes it look kind of strange.
Yeah.
And I think that's because the middle is mostly red, and there's very few people, and so very little votes in the middle. Whereas most of the population is actually over here in the West or the East, Northeast, or Florida, Texas.
that may imply that people in the urban area tend to vote to the Biden, and the people in the farmers or the cowboys, I don't know, or the people with the farm or the cows and horses tend to vote to
Yes,
Trump.
it's true.
Mm.
That is a correlation. Yep.
Yeah, it's it's not to the Biden to Trump, but it's city to the rural.
Mhm.
The battle of a big city and rural area, maybe.
Yes.
Mm. Yeah, in that sense, this map is very interesting. Yeah, small central non-populated states tend to vote to the Trump, and big and oceanside, more open-minded people tend to vote to the to Biden. So it's
Yep.
in that sense very interesting.
Yes.
Mm. So Ray, do you see some tendency about the non-decided states? They are just late to open their votes, or some tendency? Florida people are not so decided, or just the matter of the opening procedure or something like that?
Do you mean the reason why?
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason why is just purely has to do with the people who live there. Florida has lots of, if we actually look at I think this map here is a good one to look at for answering that question, because if you look at Florida, you can see it's mostly red actually. But then down here is Miami, which is mostly blue. Lots of immigrants live here. Cuban
Puerto Rican.
people live here. Yep, Puerto Rican as well. And so this area is quite blue, this urban area. And actually the highest population in Florida is going to be this area. I think Tallahassee is up here somewhere. Those high population areas are quite blue. It's just that there's enough people living in the red areas, so it almost makes it 50-50, right? Maybe it's because anywhere you live here, you're kind of on the edge.
I understand. I understand. So maybe separated in the state of Florida, many rich big city living type of people, and at the same time in the near place, the non-populated Trump lovers.
Yeah.
So that makes difficult to count the vote, maybe.
Yes. Let's look at this one here. This one reminds me of a board game because of the hexes, like Risk or something, if you've ever played that game. And it is quite similar to the last two we looked at, except now it's using grids or these hex grids. And the way they've done it is each little hex is a vote, right? So Alaska has 3, so it's 3 hexes. Right? Hawaii is 4, so it's 4 hexes. So the size is more, I don't know, you might say it's more exact because it's made up of these individual units. I think it's kind of weird though, like this one, West Virginia is like a snake shape, whereas Kansas is like a circle shape, and up here it looks kind of strange where a lot of these are kind of different shapes. Makes it a little bit difficult to compare individual states. But I think it's an interesting looking chart. What do other people think?
Yeah, I like this chart. It's very straightforward. The showing the each hex bin represent one voter. So exactly we can compare which state has more power, and which state is a key state. Maybe Florida is very apparently very important state to decide the final result because there are many bins there. And in this case, we don't necessarily stick to the geographical position or geographical surface area, because what we are most interested in is the number of the voters, the electoral voters. So in that sense, this is very precise and accurate reflection of the reality. So I like this map.
I agree. Any other thoughts?
I wonder how they make this map. Did they do a lot of like pre-calculation or prepare for the data a lot? Because there are several hexons in the same state, right?
Yeah, good question.
What do you
Yeah,
call
it looks like, I think it's this one, right?
Wow.
It looks like they use polygons and a custom shapefile. But they have multiple layers. Let's see what happens if I delete this sheet. Oh, okay. Oh, interesting. So this is the
name.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's a background. I think there's a background image on this. Is that a background image? Treated electoral hexagons, population hex maybe, no. But I don't know if you can see it, but there's like a really light, the drawings of each state. Not sure why it's not appearing here.
I feel like it might be line that connects the dots.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. So that's one layer. And then if we delete that, then we have the actual hexes. Right. So now we have the hexes are actually also a shapefile, or just each polygon and then the paths to draw the line. Interesting. It must have taken a lot of work to make this.
Well, like why I ask this question is that I wonder how much from their like maps we can use in our delivery.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a good idea. But for example, if we have a delivery of the profit or sales in Japan, and we make it, and it's difficult to read as a map, then maybe we can arrange it like a hexbin map or.
Right. Yeah, and so much of that depends on kind of what the data looks like. This data is quite simple. It's just electoral votes by state. But if there's many metrics and many dimensions, like if it's just a map of Japan, maybe simple. But if it's a map of, a store or something where they need custom shapes, then of course it gets more complicated. Okay, we have about 5 minutes left. I'll try to go through these pretty quickly. This one is quite similar to like the other charts we've seen, bubble charts, or this square chart. They're just using hexes instead. And this is good because it doesn't know all the states are exactly the same size. So it's easy to see and compare the total number of states. If we're just comparing the number of states alone and not the number of votes, then this is a pretty good map. It doesn't really take into consideration the power of each state. So that's the downside. Right. Go to the next one here. The bubble tile map is similar to the bubble map, but there's no overlapping, right? So the states here aren't overlapping anymore. They're each have their own separate space. So that's quite nice. I think the downside is the states are kind of in different spots now because they have to be. This chart is really interesting. It's called a Voronoi diagram. And each state is shown in two different bubbles. This one is for Biden to win, this one is for Trump to win, and the size of the line outside is kind of the finish line. 270 votes would get them past this finish line. So you can see with all these states that are already blue, Biden is quite close to winning, but Trump needs more, there's more of a gap here, right? Not all 50 states are here. There are the undecided ones, I think, are not in here. And there's actually an interactive version of this chart online somewhere, but I can't remember what website it was on. They don't say, do they? It's this one here. So this is an interactive version. Of course, this is not Tableau, but the same chart. But now we can take the kind of more risky states and add it to these bubbles, right? So we can see if Trump wins Texas, he gets a little bit closer. If he gets Florida as well, it's a little bit closer. And here's the total as well. 270 is to win. Maybe I think Biden will get Pennsylvania. Trump got Ohio. He got Iowa. Right. So you can see the size is growing. And I think this, well, what do people think of this kind of chart? Easy to understand, difficult?
Not easily to understand, but it's interesting to the drag and drop the undecided states to the each sackable.
Yeah, and it's kind of fun.
Yeah, and it's maybe the sort of simulation. Okay, if the Florida fall into Trump, so then the total figure is this, and the probability will up to this, and this. So as a simulator, a visual simulator, it's interesting.
Yeah, I agree. It's pretty fun. And you can do different scenarios.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. interesting. Yeah. Okay.
It looks like how to say 実験
Yeah.
生物的な実験。
ああ、なるほど。あれみたいね。卵がね、分割してきてね。細胞分裂だな。
細胞でなんだ。細胞英語。Cell. It looks like a experiment for like cells.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, cell growing or cell separation. Or sackable.
Or sackable, yep.
Yeah. Sackable chat.
So the last two here are bar charts. And this one's quite simple stack bar chart showing the guaranteed, almost guaranteed wins for Biden, and then maybe the riskier ones here, right? So pretty good for comparing just the amount needed to win. And the last chart is the combined stack bar chart showing, you know, if there's only 270, if all these ones turn out to be Democratic votes for Biden, then he will win, right? You can see he's already won if that's the case. So this is why, based on polls, people thought Biden would immediately win. In reality, it's not so close because many of these states, Trump did get, right? So it's actually quite close. And Pennsylvania is still undecided.
Yeah. So the data source is different? This is not a reality, right?
This is predictions.
Predictions, okay.
Based on polls.
Yeah.
So reality would be here.
Yeah.
So quite close and still expected to win. But if Trump wins these last four, if he wins these three, all four of these, then he will win. He has to win every single one though.
Yeah, but Nevada has 6 voters. So if Biden added 6, winning in Nevada and adding 6, then it's reached to the 270. So maybe it's a question of Nevada. If Nevada falls to the Biden, so maybe Biden win.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and Nevada is now shaded, but color is blue. So it's, but the difference is very small, right? Yeah.
Yep, less than 1%, 0.9%.
And in that sense, it's very interesting to know the opening rate. How many percentage of the votes are already open, and how many percentage still remains. So that if it's 100%, so it's done. It's 99% or 95% or maybe, but it's 84% expected. Okay, so that the result may change, right? Yeah.
Yes, it may change.
Yeah, remaining 16%, and the difference is so small, 0.9 points. So interesting.
Yes, it's quite close. So we'll see what happens. I will provide the link to the original author of these dashboards in the Slack channel. So if you want to check it out, this is a really great blog. These guys are Tableau Zen masters, so I would definitely recommend checking out some of the other things they created. It's quite good. Any last questions or comments before I end the meeting? Stop the recording here.